We tend to think of history as what's written down, the stories that survived. But what about the stories that were erased? Sometimes the most important words aren't gone forever, they're just hiding. Today, we're going to go looking for them, uncovering the ghost words of the past in some pretty unexpected places.
So let me set the scene for you. It's 1998, and this battered, kind of moldy-looking prayer book comes up for auction. At first glance, it's nothing special, but locked inside is a secret that's been waiting for centuries. The big question was, what was it really worth?
$2 million. That's what someone paid for it. $2 million. So what in the world makes an old prayer book that valuable? Well, the answer isn't about what was written on its pages. It's about what was scraped off. See, on the surface, it's just a religious text, but hiding underneath that ink, literally underneath it, are lost treatises by Archimedes himself. Yeah, the greatest mathematician of the ancient world. And some of these were works that existed nowhere else. This wasn't just a book, it was a time capsule. What this book is something called a palimpsest. The word itself comes from Greek and basically means scraped again. And that's all it is, really. It's recycled paper. Except for the ancient world, the paper was way, way more valuable. So why would anyone go through all the trouble of recycling a book? It's pretty simple, actually. Economics. Making new writing material, especially parchment from animal skin, was incredibly expensive and took a ton of work. Reusing an old book that nobody cared about anymore, that was just being practical. And parchment was the good stuff. I mean, it was durable, it was smooth, it could last for 1,000 years. It was just too precious to toss out. For a lot of scribes, the page itself was the real treasure, maybe even more than the words written on it.
And the process itself was a real grind. You'd have to take an old book apart page by page. Then you'd spend forever washing or scraping the old ink off. Sometimes you'd even cut the pages and fold them differently, just to make the old text even harder to see, before you wrote your new text right on top.
And this is what you get. To our eyes, it just looks like a single, kind of messy layer of writing. The original text underneath, the undertext, is like a ghost. You can almost see it, but you can't quite read it. And for centuries, those secrets were just trapped. But today, we've got a new way in. Using something called multispectral imaging, scientists can photograph these pages under all different kinds of light, from infrared to ultraviolet. Then, they use a computer to combine all those images, and suddenly, the iron in the original ink just pops. Those ghost words, they finally have a voice again. And this hunt for hidden texts has been going on for over 100 years. Get this. Back in 1906, a scholar first spotted the Archimedes text with nothing more than a magnifying glass. But it took our modern text to really uncover it all. And now, this is happening on a massive scale. At places like St. Catherine's Monastery, they're imaging hundreds of these things. And the stuff we're finding is just, wow. It's an incredible mix of lost knowledge. We found unique math from Archimedes, of course, but also lost speeches from ancient Athens, some of the oldest known verses of the Quran hidden under Christian writing, and even early Bible commentaries that were literally overwritten by a newer version of the Bible. Every single one is a little window into a world we thought was gone. Okay, so reading the ink is already amazing. But what if I told you we're now figuring out how to read the page itself? That the actual material the book is made of has its own story. Scientists are now using this technique called peptide mass fingerprinting. It sounds really complex, but think of it like this. It's basically doing a DNA test on the parchment. They can take a tiny sample, sometimes with something as simple as an eraser, and analyze the leftover proteins from the animal skin. And this tells us a whole new story. We can identify exactly what kind of animal was used. Sheep, goat, you name it. We can find traces of stuff they used to erase the ink, like milk, just like the old recipes said. We can even reconstruct how a scribe cobbled together one book from the pages of 4 or 5 completely different old books. It's wild. Now, with a discovery this big, myths are going to pop up. And one of the biggest ones is that if we'd had Archimedes' hidden work all along, we would have invented calculus centuries earlier. It's a great what-if story, but it's just not true. The reality is, the guys who invented calculus did use Archimedes' work, but they used his other works, the ones that were never lost. The real missing piece back then wasn't this one book, it was algebra. Yeah, the historian David Bressoud is pretty blunt about it. The whole idea that this one lost text stopped a scientific revolution in its tracks, he just says, that is nonsense. History is always more complicated than that. And that kind of leads us to an even bigger myth, right? This whole idea of the Dark Ages, where we imagine monks running around systematically destroying all the great knowledge of the ancient world. Palimpsests with Christian prayers written over Greek philosophy are often used as proof. But is that what was really happening?
When you dig into the actual evidence, the picture gets a lot more nuanced. There wasn't some grand conspiracy to destroy pagan books. In fact, most of the book-burning edicts were aimed at other Christian texts that were considered heretical. And ironically, it was Christian monks who copied and preserved almost all of the classical works we still have today. The real reason so much knowledge was lost in the West was a lot less dramatic: economic collapse, political chaos, and the simple fact that not many people could read Greek anymore.
So the story of these palimpsests shows us that history is never really finished. Lost chapters are being found all the time, not because of some great act of destruction, but because of everyday practicality and reuse. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other lost worlds are out there, just sitting on a library shelf, hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to find the right way to look?